think this is also kind of the video where it's like the reason you don't need to buy any makeup to do latte makeup right now, right? Like we all have all the things this week. Hey lovelies, thanks for stopping by my channel. I am excited to share with you my top 10 Basic B palettes. Yes, I have seen this one rolling around on YouTube here, and I just love getting to see a peek into everyone's eyeshadow palette collection. Yes, I am that nosy girl, and I like videos like this where it's just like little snippets of someone's collection. I get a little overwhelmed if it's like all of my palettes. I'm not gonna do all of that. You probably did see that in my palette declutter, but that's a whole different vibe. So if you're here to see a little peek into my palette collection and we haven't met before, my name is Kelly and I'm a professional hair and makeup artist, and here on my channel I strive to keep beauty real. Real honest, real relatable, and real fun. So if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, don't forget to click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Before we dive in, I just want to maybe say a little bit about what I think a basic palette is. I do think that that's going to be a little different for everybody. You know, when I think of basic, I think a lot of people are just right away thinking like all brown, all day, nudes, nudes, nudes. So for me, when I think of basic, I think of maybe something at first glance that isn't like an overly exciting creative color story. Maybe it does lean a little bit more into the neutral side of things, but I will be honest, I have a couple in here that aren't just brown, brown, brown. And I think that it's also maybe something that you just know is going to be like that reliable, quick, easy palette. Maybe it's something that you can use for a really quick, easy day look like I have on, or build it up into something that's more like sultry, just like that standby palette for you. I hope that makes sense. So let's dive into this right now. All right, so I think maybe let's just go in size of palette. And I will say I do have like a variety of everything from little palettes, bigger palettes. I've got some high-end / luxury. I've got some more affordable brands in here. So we've got a mishmash of everything as I'm flashing around probably the most expensive palette in all of this. So this is Lisa Eldridge. And of course I had to pull out Cinnabar. I mean, this is about as basic as it gets, right? Like, it's small, you have 6 shades, you have 3 beautiful mattes. The mattes are stunning, and then you have 2 shimmers and a topper shade. So to me, this is just totally that palette that I'm gonna pull out when I want something that's shimmery, that's warm, that maybe I am having a rush of a morning and I just need something that is not going to let me sit there and play with eyeshadow for too long. Is this you? Do you need one of these? Like, I prefer palettes that are, let's say, 12 or more shadows in them, just because I do really like to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And sometimes all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, Kelly, this was supposed to be quick makeup. Get out the door right now. And so this really, I mean, there's only so many ways I can go with this. Can I do a deep smoky eye with this? Yes. Can I also do just something really like light, a wash of color? Absolutely. But for those days where it's like, all right, you need to get out, just pop on a couple of these and we're good to go. So I really do like this palette. I've talked about this one before in how, you know, I think people were like, oh, I have these shades when they got it. And it's like, yes, you knew you had these shades when you purchased this. We all knew we had these shades. If you have eyeshadows, you probably have all of these shades. If you've ever leaned into warm neutrals, you have these shades. For me, it was definitely the curiosity of Lisa's formulas, and just also the packaging is stunning, and that it's just a quick grab and go. I can travel with it. It's just like an easy, like, don't have to think about it. And I do have 2 of Lisa's palettes. I'm very glad that I have them. I haven't purchased any more since I got these. I think I'm happy with what I have for right now. We'll see what she comes out with in the future, but for me right now, it isn't like a, oh my gosh, gotta have them all, but I do really like Cinnabar. So that's gonna be the first one. All right, moving up into a little bit bigger. I've talked about this one quite a bit here on my channel. This is the Baked Browns palette from Dose of Colors. I think that Dose of Colors is an underrated brand when it comes to eyeshadow. They do also have a really nice concealer. I actually do really like the Meet Your Hue concealer. So this palette has seen a lot of love. It's kind of dusty, sorry about that. So this is, again, like warm neutrals. That's about as basic as it gets. And that really is where my heart usually lies, like leaning into those neutral, maybe like slightly warm neutrals. It's just something that I find really flattering, something that I can pop on the eye easily and can really go with a lot. So this is just a set of 6 mattes. So obviously if I'm only using this, I'm only gonna get a matte look, but it's very easy to just use this palette along with one pop of color. Maybe it's a cream shadow, maybe it's, you know, a single that I've really been loving. There's just something about these that are so, so beautiful. I travel with this a lot because it is, you know, just so nice and compact, and the shadows really travel well, which is appreciated. So I have one other Dose of Colors, which one is it? Cutting Edge. It's the one that's got the green with a little bit of gold in it. Again, a 5-pan. I really do like it. I just recently saw something about a Dose of Colors sale, and they had this like totally basic palette. I can't remember the name of it, but they were doing swatches and I was like, yes, that's very basic. It's very beautifully basic, but I don't need to go down that road right now. But if you've never tried Dose of Colors, if you like a really blendable, not overly powdery, but not overly creamy, like somewhere right in the middle formula, this is really gorgeous. So should I swatch it? I'm sorry I didn't swatch the Lisa Eldridge, but I do have a full in-depth review on both of the palettes that I got from her. So I'm just gonna take a couple of these. We'll just take these two center ones. I feel like that's gonna give us a good little idea here. I mean, beautiful, right? Like very creamy. Ooh, this color up here. Like it's definitely warm, but when people think warm, I think usually they think like leaning into orange, and these actually lean into almost that like salmony, you know, like where it's got like a little bit of pink and orange to it. So I think that it's really flattering on a lot of skin tones. So love this one. All right, the next one here in my collection is my very first Wayne Goss palette that I got, the Imperial Topaz palette. This is just another really great basic that I'm having a hard time getting into. There we go. So this one is a little bit different vibe than the Lisa Eldridge. You still have the same amount of shades in it, but it's in a different realm. So obviously right off the bat, you can see that this one has a black. Here's the Cinnabar to compare. So to me, this one actually leans a little bit more neutral, where this one's a little bit warm neutral. Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say. The one thing about both of these palettes is they both have one of those like shimmery topper shades that I just don't utilize a lot. So it's kind of a bit of a bummer, but this is just such a quick, easy grab and go palette. Like it's so easy. I will also say that I think that the Lisa Eldridge shades, they have much more foil and shimmer, whereas Wayne's are a little bit more of that like satin shimmer. You know, Wayne's big thing is that he wants something that is going to be suitable on all eye skin, you know, on every age of makeup wearer. So I would say that these shimmers are much more satin. So I think what I'll do here is I'll swatch one of the Cinnabar shades next to a couple of the Wayne Goss shades. So these two shades here are, I would say again, that like satin shimmer formula. This one's a little bit more pearlescent, and then we have the topper, and then like two more like beautiful, stunning mattes. So then if I take one of these shades, not color comparison by any means, but if I take the warm copper from the Cinnabar palette, so the top two are Wayne's and the bottom one is Lisa Eldridge. Hopefully you're able to see that the Lisa Eldridge just has much more shine and reflectivity. These are also beautiful and lustrous, but they're just like a little bit more calm, but they also just blend on the lid beautifully. If you have very textured eyes, you're not going to have a problem at all. Admittedly, I totally got this because I love Wayne. I do really like this. I think I have two other of his eyeshadow palettes. I don't know that I would necessarily buy another one at this point, just because I am the girl who likes the shimmer with a capital S usually. And now if I do need something that's a little bit more in those satin formulas, I have a couple to be able to get into. I have the more rosy one. Is that the Moonstone palette? Ooh, can't remember. And then I have this. I might have one other one. So it's like I have all of the shades that I need when I'm looking for something a little bit softer. And this is still my favorite just because it's such an easy basic palette, which is why we're here. All right, this is gonna be on the other end of the spectrum here. I've talked about this one a lot. This is the Wet n Wild Coffee Cat palette. You cannot get this palette anymore, sadly. I love this stinking palette. It is, it really is kind of like if this one was like more elaborated, right? Like if Lisa Eldridge made a Cinnabar palette that had this many shades in it, obviously the packaging is very, very different. I'm waiting for the day that this breaks. It's going to be very sad. So these shadows perform so beautifully. If you've been here for a very, oh, this is broken a little bit. Ah, I thought it might be. So if you've been here from the earlier days of my channel, we've all talked about Dirty Camel. There is a shade in here that I can't even remember what it's called anymore, but I always call it this Dirty Camel shade. So I'm going to swatch that. I'll also swatch a couple of these shimmers. They are just beautiful. And, you know, not everything in here leans overly warm. There are a couple more like taupey shades. Maybe I'll go ahead and swatch that taupey shimmer that's in here. Oh no. I'm wondering, well, if either from swatching or if this palette is just getting kind of old, because it doesn't seem to be like coming up quite as like lustrous as it usually does. So this shade right here is Dirty Camel. I love that so much. It's just this like grungy, slightly mustardy, like camel color with just a little bit of something extra to it. Focus. There we go. Hopefully you're able to see that. But these shades, I mean, they have some nice shimmer to them. I do think you have to build them up a little bit more. And I personally, with these, you know, sometimes with these types of formulas, they just tend to be the type that if you use your fingers a lot, you just tend to get a bit of hard pan. I'm wondering if that's kind of what's happening as well on these shimmers. But seriously, I think I got this for like $7.99 or something ridiculous like that. It's starting to lose its smell. That's a little sad. It never smelled like coffee, but it did smell good. Okay, so we've got Lisa Eldridge, Wayne Goss, Wet n Wild. That's how we roll. So again, the reason that I do like this one is it is a little basic palette that I can get a lot of different looks with. You've got some really nice deep shades. You've got quite a few in that mid-range and some lighter shades as well. I love a palette that has a good variety of depth because I can then create a lot of different looks, and I just love this one. Oh, okay. Oh no, it's happened, y'all. Okay. Oh no, the pin just left. Oh my God, what am I gonna do now? Okay, yeah, this is, it's sad. Now it won't go on at all. Ah, dang it. I just totally like manifested that, I guess. All right, I'm gonna set this to the side. I'll deal with it later. We're gonna take a break for just a moment past the warm neutrals and move into something a little more neutral to cool. I do have some more warm neutrals in here, if you know me. But let's talk about Coffee Talk. So I have the Sydney Grace Coffee Talk palette in the light version. I love this palette. It is beautiful. There was just something about this that, again, is a very quick grab and go palette. So this just has all of these beautiful, they're pretty much cool neutrals. You do have one warmer shade in here. I think also the reason that for me this leans really cool is because I do have neutral to warm skin. So everything is just probably gonna look cool in comparison. So that's just kind of part of it. But I will swatch a few of these. Sadly, this one was discontinued. So if you were able to snag it in this last Sydney Grace Christmas in July sale, I am very, very happy for you. So I'll just do one of the mattes, that deeper, slightly warmer matte, and then I'll do a couple of the shimmers. The only thing about this palette is I wish, and I was actually just talking to my friend Mel from Mel by Grace, and I was saying that the only thing about this palette is that this shimmer that I'm about to swatch, it kind of misses the mark for me in this palette. So that bottom one is Crema, and then I did Ristretto and Macchiato. So when I see this shade, especially on my skin, it is very pearlescent. It's like leaning into that silvery pink. That's not usually the vibe that I'm gonna want with these other colors. I guess I could see if you're kind of like sticking in this little triangle here. I know that I'm talking about like my favorite basic palettes and then I'm complaining about this one. This is just where my brain goes. Everything in here is beautiful, but for me, it's just that like this shade just misses a mark for me. But I do hear that it's pretty easy to pop the pans out in this, so I think what I might do is just pop this out and put one of my other 7 bajillion Sydney Grace shades that are in like a little bit more champagne, even like a rose gold would be really pretty in this palette. It's just the one thing, you know, I always need a good inner corner, and when I'm pulling out this palette, I always just end up grabbing for something different because this it just isn't what I want to wear on my inner corner with these other colors. So love this. If you have it, pull it out. I think this is also kind of the video where it's like the reason you don't need to buy any makeup to do latte makeup right now, right? Like we all have all the things. This would be obviously a great one for that, and it's themed because it's Coffee Talk. On the heels of Coffee Talk, we might as well talk about Natasha Denona Glam. This is probably my only, while I'm sitting here, I might as well just wipe out this palette because wow, she's dirty right now. This is probably my only cooler toned high-end palette that I have. I just, again, I don't lean into a lot of cool colors. There is just something about this palette though that is just that like effortless, grab it, you know you're gonna get a great look out of it. I've used this on a lot of brides, so many brides, and I think that there's just something to this that it's like you just know you're gonna get a beautiful look every time. And that's, to me, sometimes what a basic palette is it's just like good old reliable. So you do have, you know, I mean, a couple warmer shades in here and some rosy shades. So you can lean a little bit away from the taupiness of this palette, but usually that's kind of, you know, what we end up getting out of this one. And she's lovely. I just find anymore, like, the reason I use this palette on a lot of brides, or if there's a time that I'm gonna use this palette, it's when I'm looking for more of that like average expectation of shimmers, because I always talk about it. I wish Natasha's shimmers just like shimmed a little harder, but in photos, you know, you just want something that's like really flattering and maybe not something that's like so sheeny. So that is why I pulled this one out, like I said, for brides, because they're going to be getting photos, and sometimes things that are like overly reflective can just be a little distracting. So love this one. It's definitely a basic for me and not one I see getting rid of. Okay, so let's see. How many have we done here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this next one is a palette, honestly, from a brand that I don't really shop from anymore, but right away when I thought about filming this video, I was like, this has got to go in here because it is the one that I just immediately thought of, and this is California Love from ColourPop. So this palette is, again, I mean, I have a type, y'all. I have a type. But this palette, I think, does lean a little bit more into the bronzy side of the neutrals of those basic tones. There's just some shades in here that are really beautiful. I am kind of surprised just because it's been around for so long, but it is still available on the ColourPop website. But to me, that means that it's still selling really well. And there is a good reason. It's just pretty. I will say, I feel like now, you know, I have tried so many formulas that it's like, okay, you know, kind of like meh. I don't find that ColourPop is necessarily like a wowing formula. I have another palette that's in my chopping block right now that has just been a little bit underwhelming, in all honesty, and that I'm probably going to be decluttering. So you should check out. I have a video coming up that's going to be 1 in, 1 out, trying to maintain or at least not grow my collection too much. And one of my goals for this year for makeup was to do a 1 in, 1 out on most things. So it's like, if I buy a cream blush, I got to get rid of a cream blush or a blush of some sort, you know? So it's not that I'm just like keep getting this mountain of makeup after doing a pretty good declutter. So anyway, swatches of this one. So look, it's just pretty. I actually really do like using these glitters. I know that a lot of people don't really like doing that. It's not something that I do a lot of, but I really do like the glitter in this one. So again, just a beautiful, like warm, kind of orangey, bronzy leaning palette. I've had it a long time. It still performs pretty well. And so it is one of the few ColourPop palettes that I still have in my collection. And it is just a good basic. So now those are like what I would consider a lot of people's like basics, right? So now we're gonna lean into a couple that for me are like my basics, but also might be like basics plus to some people. So another one that I have talked forever. Oh, we have 2 from the same brand in here. So I did not realize that. I did not realize that. But this one I've talked about a lot. This is the Violet Voss All of You Forever palette. I believe this one is still available. I hope she's still available. So to me, the reason this is basic is obviously you have a lot of these beautiful, again, leaning slightly warm, but almost like rosy warm shades. You have a beautiful kind of like goldy champagne, a nice color that, so this is almost, okay, this is almost what I wish was in that Coffee Talk palette. Oh, I didn't swatch anything out of Natasha Denona Glam. I'm sure you've all seen a bajillion swatches from that palette. But in here you have this sort of like light white golden color for the inner corner. So that for me and my skin tone is almost what I need more when I'm going for like a little bit more of a neutral look. But then we do have some greens in here, but they are beautiful, kind of earthy greens. They're all shimmers. So I just think that these are just stunning. And I think that this still can be a very basic palette because I mean, some of these, like this one here, this is All of You, and I will do All of Me. Oh my gosh, All of Me and All of You. So All of You is more of a gray leaning green, and All of Me is a little bit more of that like traditional olive green. So I think these are basic colors. These are basic colors to me. It really kind of depends on your makeup preferences, but since like I always need green in my life, this to me has just been a really nice one. I do really like the Violet Voss formula. I think you don't really hear a lot about it, and I think that they are very nice. mine still perform really nicely. I think I've had this palette for a long time and I think it still performs beautifully. Maybe I should have swatched some of the mattes in here for you, but I've talked about this one a lot on my channel. I know that I have looks on my Instagram featuring it as well, but it is one that I love. So now we might as well talk about the other Violet Voss palette that I have here in my basics, which is so crazy. So now we're gonna move into another basic shade for me that I lean into, and that is more of the like warm rosy shades. I don't do as much of the cool rosies, but I do more of the warm rosies. And I think that there was a time where everybody was doing rosy neutrals. Rosy neutral was the basic. I mean, that's what everybody did. Like, you were not doing warm neutrals, you weren't doing cool neutrals. It was all about the rosy neutrals of some sort. And so this one definitely came in clutch. This is the Violet Voss Holy Grail palette. I believe that I got this one through BoxyCharm, actually. So that's how long she's been around. This is actually the one that I have on my eyes right now. And really, you do have just about every basic you could want. You've got some warms, you have some neutrals, you've got the rosy shades. Like, this is just beautiful. It's just beautiful. Today on my eyes, I just did 3 of the shades. I have this shade here. This is Bestie. And then on my lid is Cool Beans. That shade is just so beautiful. It reminds me a little bit of Blushed from Sydney Grace. And then I just put a little bit of Are You Kiddin' Me on the corner. So just like super, super easy. But this is a totally basic look. But I knew like, yep, okay, I can totally like pop this on. It's gonna be quick, it's gonna be easy. Again, I think Violet Voss is really overlooked. I don't know if they've done anything new recently. I know that they've definitely like branched out into some pretty like bright color stories, which I can totally appreciate, but I just love this. I will say, like, as I was using this, I'm like, this reminds me a lot of Sydney Grace. I don't think that the shimmers are like quite as like foiled. That being said, I've had this palette a really long time too, so it could just be that it's getting old. Let's be honest, but I really do like this one. I don't think you can get this one anymore, but a lot of times when I do these videos, it's just like a, hey, reminder, check your stash. Check your stash before you go out and buy a basic palette that you might already have something similar to in your collection. So that being said, something that's along these lines a little bit, but is smaller and has different textures, the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 2. This palette, I love this palette. So this to me really does have a lot of the vibes that the Holy Grail palette does. Just about got hit in the face by that creams thing right there. So again, here we do have 2 creams that you can utilize. I think that they're a really pretty base. And then you do have the beautiful row of like rosy tinted mattes. And then you've got these really nice shimmers. The thing about these shimmers is they are more textured as far as like the particles that are in them. So we'll just grab a couple here. I really, truly love the mattes in here. For me, it is like, it was really surprising. Like, I don't know why I was so surprised, but I was like, wow, these are so beautiful. Like, even touching them now, I'm kind of like, damn, I gotta pull this palette out soon. Look at that. So, so pretty. I wonder if I can get close enough. I'm trying to get close enough that you can maybe see some of the texture in those shadows. They just have little light reflecting particles. For me, if I put these on wet, I don't find that they fall throughout the day. If you have like incredibly hooded eyes, you do find that that's the case, you might want to tap on a little bit of a tacky primer just to make sure that those little particles don't stray all over, but I personally haven't had an issue with it. So I really love this. This was an impulse buy, totally influenced by my friend Kara from Beauty and the Frizz. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all. I had no plans to purchase it, even though the packaging is just like stunning, blinding, but stunning. And the colors inside were totally up my alley. And I was like, nah, I'm not gonna need it. I've got all the things. And I was like, I got it and it was love at first sight. So definitely still one of my beautiful basic palettes. So there are 10 here. Did I miss any that you have in your collection that you really love? Or did I miss any that you know that I have in my collection and you're like, how could you not think of that? Let me know down below. I really enjoyed getting to give you a bite-sized look at my palette collection. I don't know if I should do something like maybe like the most unique color stories in my collection, in my personal opinion. Maybe that'll be one that I do next. I think that could be a really fun fall video. So if you want to see that, let me know down below. But again, let me know some of your favorite basics. Thank you so much, lovelies. It really does mean so much that you take some time out of your day to spend it with me. Don't forget to click like on your way out, and I will see you really soon.